everyone, and welcome back to our channel. This is a new series that we are starting to record today on kitchen witch videos that are a little less labor intensive and require a little less sitting and watching and maintaining in order to accomplish your edible ends. One of our patrons essentially reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to do some low spoon kitchen witch videos, show recipes that still warm hearts and bellies, but which someone could presumably go ahead and make even when they were depressed, anxious, ill, or just couldn't. And so that is what we are starting to record, and I'm hoping to do, one a week or so for a while until I've shown the recipes that I tend to make when I don't feel like making anything at all. Now we are still going to be cooking in season with ingredients that at least here locally are what's available at this time of year. That may vary for your area, so of course please adjust the recipes accordingly. All the recipes I'm going to be making are pretty flexible and work very easily with substitute ingredients. I'm going to be detailing some of the things that you could do instead. So these are the recipes from my household. These are actually what I make when I have no spoons. I am a person who is chronically ill. I am differently abled, I am non-neurotypical, and for various reasons there are some days where I don't want to cook at all. And I do want to say Yin is a wonderful partner, and some days he does the cooking. I'm definitely the person who cooks the most often, but he also is the primary income bringer for the household. And sometimes his work has him working late, so it's either I get something on the table or we're snacking out of the fridge that night. So these are the recipes that I make when I don't feel like making anything at all. Anyway, the first recipe I'm going to go over in this series is one that I make probably once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's really, really common for us to have this, and it varies so much based on what is in season and what I'm in the mood for. But essentially it is roasted vegetables that have been tossed with just a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper. Sometimes I throw on some fresh herbs, sometimes I throw on some dried herbs, sometimes I throw on a little bit of Cajun spice or something a little spicier. It really depends, but essentially roasted vegetables, and then they are topped with an egg and cheese and broiled until the whites of the eggs set, but the yolk is still runny, and served at the table. Now, if I've gone in sort of the melty, gooey cheddar Gouda, we may have some Tabasco on the table with that. If I have gone more in the direction of Italian hard cheeses and dried herbs, then what might be on the table is some nice crusty French bread. We've gone quite Italian, and there's been little rainbow tomatoes and oregano, and then we've had that with focaccia bread. It's an incredibly flexible thing to make. So I may even show several variations over the course of this series, but essentially it's get yourself a cast iron skillet or a large baking tray with a rim around it. If you want to, you can line these with foil and it will make cleanup a snap, but I don't ever do that, and I'm not entirely sure why. But I don't ever do that. So then you're going to want vegetables to roast. I have golden chanterelles and baby portobellos because golden chanterelles are in season in my area and I adore them, and I think that they are worth a little extra expense for how beautifully they roast up. But honestly, again, any kind of mushroom is fine, or other vegetables that you want to roast. Today I am also doing Brussels sprouts, because they are also in season in my area, and I find that these are a much maligned vegetable. Brussels sprouts are fantastic as long as you don't boil them, which turns them into evil, squashy little blobs that burst a sour tasting liquid when you bite into them, and it's deeply unpleasant. So I do understand why people malign them, but if you roast them instead and finish them off under the broiler, they get nice and crunchy and flavorful, and with the right amount of salt and right amount of oil, they're almost as addictive to eat as French fries. Okay. Other ingredient, cheese. I am using a nice Asiago with rosemary that I got at Trader Joe's. But you can really use whatever you feel is appropriate for sort of the angle that you're taking the recipe and what vegetables you're using. And then obviously eggs. Basically, you need few enough eggs that they're not bumping into each other and interfering with each other's cook time. But other than that, you can have an egg per person so long as your dish is big enough. Salt. Pepper. Olive oil in my giant jug because I buy it at Costco where it's really inexpensive. You're going to need a knife and a cheese grater and a working oven. So very simple, and adjust as you like, and we're gonna get into making it. So, right, let's get started. Well, my Brussels sprouts are now in the oven. If you use vegetables that cook more at the same time, like they're all done around the same time, you don't need to do sort of the staggered adding to the pan that I am doing, but Brussels sprouts take longer to cook than mushrooms, so I'm adding my mushrooms after the Brussels sprouts have about 20-25 minutes in the oven to get nice and soft before they get nice and crispy. So my oven is at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm just gonna roast the Brussels sprouts until they're cooked through, and then I'm going to be going up to broiling temperature for the mushrooms and the Brussels sprouts at once. Now in the meantime, I'm going to clean my mushrooms just with a damp cloth, and I'm going to have a glass of muscat because I have the time, and this is a low spoon. Oh, I'm having a glass and Yen is having a glass. Because this is a low spoon recipe, I have kind of a minute to sit and have a drink. So that is exactly what I am going to do. After the Brussels sprouts are fork tender and you can literally slide a fork in. At 450, this took mine about 20 minutes. You can add the mushrooms to the pan along with a little more olive oil, salt, and pepper so that the mushrooms are also evenly coated. If you feel up to it and you have the spoons, you can do this in a separate bowl, but I did it right on top of my Brussels sprouts and I didn't have a problem. Then put the entire pan underneath the broiler and broil for approximately 3 to 5 minutes until the mushrooms have completely given up their liquid and have gotten nice and crisp. Pull the entire pan out and set it somewhere safe and crack your eggs into it. And salt and pepper the eggs as liberally as you care for your eggs. Then top the entire pan with cheese. Put it back underneath the broiler for, again, approximately 3 to 5 minutes. Everyone likes their eggs to a different degree of doneness. I like mine with the whites just set and the yolks still runny, but we actually live with someone that won't eat eggs cooked this way at all, and so every time we have this dish, I actually scramble them an egg and they eat it with a scrambled egg on top. So do your eggs to however you like them done, but generally I pull them at about 4 minutes when the cheese is completely melted and nice and browned and the whites are done, but the yolks are liquid. And then I serve just the pile of veggies with the egg on top and whatever garnish you want. You can use herbs or Tabasco sauce, or you can just serve as is. I have lived with a couple different people who prefer this served over a bed of rice. If you want a staple grain in there, you could do that. It's really, really flexible. Now, because I was asked to by one of our students, not actually the patron who requested the video, but someone else, I'm just going to briefly touch on what I think are the magical qualities of some of the ingredients that I used in this recipe. By all means, look at this through your own magical lens. It doesn't have to be through mine. I tend to think of eggs as being for rebirth and renewal. I think of them as a stable source of long-term energy, both physically and magically. And I tend to think of Brussels sprouts for all of the various vitamins and minerals they contain that are so good for your heart. So energetically, I also think that they are very, very good for your heart. And for mushrooms, which are an excellent meat substitute for our vegetarian viewers because they actually contain certain components that the body processes as almost as if they are meat. And for mushrooms, well, I tend to think of the way that they mimic the human connections, both the connections that we have within ourselves, our brain cells talking to each other, and the way the mycelia mimic humans talking to one another. And I tend to magically associate them with that human connectivity and connectivity to the earth, and then also cognitive function. So mushrooms contain all of these amazing components that actually boost cognitive function and help keep our brains healthy. So not only do they sort of do brain-like activities, but they also boost our brains. Wow. That was awful, but okay. So as someone who has very few spoons right now, this recipe is perfect not just because it is so easy, but because it is a rebirth and renewal for the heart and the mind and for human connection, which is exactly what I need. And also from someone who works out a lot, this contains basically everything I need to help my body rebuild itself after working out and after physical strain, so that I can keep being physically active, even though that is a struggle for me a lot of days. So that is the magical, unspiritual, and energetic interpretations that I place on this recipe, but by all means interpret it as it aligns with your system, or leave the magic out entirely and just consider it a fun and easy recipe. If you do choose to make any variation of this recipe, let me know how it works out for you. Let me know if you liked it, if it kept your bellies full and warm, if it made you happy, if it made you feel any better. So I know that it's really scary out there right now for a lot of people, and I know that a lot of people are going through a really hard time. So take care of one another and try to find little things that make you feel content and like you're gonna make it through to the next day, and be safe, everyone.